Most people live their entire lives giving their energy away to things that don't matter. Notifications, gossip, arguments that go nowhere. People who drain you just by entering the room. And then we wonder why we feel tired, lost, or stuck. The truth is simple. Where your attention goes, your life follows. It's not a metaphor, it's not philosophy, it's the law of focus, and it shapes everything about who you become. Every single day, you wake up with a limited amount of attention, and you're spending it, whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you spending it with intention, or are you just reacting? Because if you're not choosing your focus, something else is choosing it for you. That's why your energy feels scattered. That's why you feel like you're working hard, but getting nowhere. You're giving power to distractions, to noise, to people who haven't earned a second of your time. This episode isn't about becoming selfish. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's about becoming aware. It's about remembering that your energy is sacred, that what you give your attention to, repeatedly, daily, is what becomes your future. If you focus on problems, you feed them. If you focus on growth, you create it. And the difference between who you are and who you could become starts with one decision: to focus on yourself. So today, we're going to reclaim that focus. We'll explore 10 reflections grounded in Stoic thinking, not abstract theories, but practical shifts that can help you redirect your energy toward what truly matters. You don't need to do everything. You just need to stop leaking power to the wrong things and start choosing you. Let's begin. 1. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Look closely at your life, and you'll see a pattern. The parts of it that are growing, the ones that feel alive, purposeful, even slightly uncomfortable. Those are the places you've been giving your attention to. And the parts that feel broken, chaotic, or neglected. Those are the places you've either ignored or abandoned mentally. It's not just a poetic idea. It's a law of human experience. Wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, your future is built. But the problem is, we don't pay attention to our attention. Most people are just surviving on mental autopilot. We wake up and immediately reach for the phone, scroll through other people's lives, react to emails, reply to messages we don't care about, and unconsciously start letting the world decide what we should think, feel, or do next. It's not just time we're wasting, it's identity, it's presence, it's power. Epictetus said, "Wherever you find yourself blaming others, you're wasting your freedom." But I'd go further. Wherever you find yourself distracted, you're wasting your future. Because the mind is like soil. It will grow whatever you plant in it, whether that's resentment, envy, anxiety, or peace, discipline, and clarity. And what you plant is determined by what you focus on. So the question is, what are you feeding your life with every day? If you constantly focus on what's missing, you'll feel incomplete. If you obsess over what people think, you'll become a mirror for their moods, not a master of your own. If you focus on things outside your control, you'll drown in frustration. But if you shift that attention inward, not in a self-absorbed way, but in a purposeful way, you start to take your power back. You begin to direct the energy that builds your habits, your beliefs, and your actions. And with time, that energy reshapes everything. Here's something most people never realize. Energy is not infinite. Mental energy, emotional focus, willpower, they're all finite resources. And Every time you spend 10 minutes worrying about what someone thinks of you, or comparing your life to someone else's, or replaying a mistake you made last week, you're not just wasting time. You're burning mental fuel that could have gone toward something meaningful. And over time, this drain becomes invisible. You start feeling tired for no reason, unmotivated, spiritually stuck. But it's not depression, it's depletion. You've given everything away. Now imagine this. What if you decided from this moment on to treat your attention like sacred currency? What if you guarded it the way you guard your money, your space, your privacy? What if you stopped giving it away to every distraction that knocks on your door, and instead invested it into yourself, into your focus, into your long-term vision? That's when your life starts to change, not dramatically at first, but slowly, with consistency. Start by asking one simple question. What is this costing me mentally? Every time you open your phone, say yes to a request, or get pulled into a meaningless argument, ask yourself, what am I giving up in return? Because focus is always a trade. You're never just paying attention. You're always paying with attention. You're always sacrificing something else you could have done with that energy. The Stoics weren't against the world. They just knew how to stay centered within it. They trained their minds not to get hijacked by every emotion or event. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do." That's attention, simplified, focused, undisturbed. That's the mindset of someone who protects their peace by mastering their focus. And it doesn't require perfection, just awareness. Start small, 1 hour a day with no input, no news, no social media, no conversations. Just you, your thoughts, your breath, your purpose. Let your mind settle. Let your energy return to you. And from that place of clarity, choose, consciously, where your focus deserves to go next. Because in the end, your focus is your freedom. What you choose to look at becomes what you experience. And if you want a better life, start by looking inward, not outward. Redirect your attention. Guard it like it matters, because it does. You only get one mind, one body, one short life. Spend it wisely. 2. Break the autopilot. Reclaim your inner power. Have you ever driven somewhere, arrived at your destination, and realized you don't remember a single detail of the drive? That eerie sensation of being present in body but absent in mind is how many people are living every single day. And the most dangerous part? They think it's normal. Autopilot is a silent thief. It steals your time, your clarity, your potential. It convinces you that repetition equals progress, when in fact it's just motion without direction. It's the reason so many people wake up one day and feel like strangers in their own lives, successful on paper, exhausted in spirit, because they've been moving but not living, reacting but not deciding, surviving but not creating. Breaking out of that autopilot isn't about doing more, it's about waking up. Waking up to your patterns, to your choices, to the fact that every single day you spend half awake is a day you never get back. It's about realizing that the mind will always take the path of least resistance unless you interrupt it, unless you remind it that you're the one in control. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that every day is a battlefield between habit and intention. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastering yourself starts with noticing. Noticing when your thoughts aren't yours, when your actions aren't conscious, when you're following a script you never wrote. That's when you interrupt the cycle. That's when you break the spell. But the truth is, most people don't want to break it, not because they're weak, but because they're tired. It takes energy to change. It takes awareness, and it takes courage to admit that comfort has turned into a cage. But here's what you need to know. Nothing in your life will shift until you do, and no one is coming to do it for you. If you want to reclaim your power, you have to step outside the patterns you've normalized, the thought loops, the emotional reactions, the unconscious habits that silently define who you are becoming. Start small. Begin by observing your routines, not just repeating them. Why do you scroll your phone first thing in the morning? Why do you eat when you're not hungry? Why do you feel anxious when things are quiet? Ask, don't judge, because observation is the beginning of transformation. Then start disrupting the cycle. Move differently. Sit in silence instead of filling it. Say no when your reflex is yes. Take a different route to work. Change your schedule. Speak slower. Breathe deeper. These aren't life-changing actions on the surface, but they are symbolic. They tell your mind, I'm awake now. I'm paying attention. I'm not running this life on old programming anymore. You don't need to be aggressive. You just need to be intentional. Don't fight the autopilot. Outgrow it. Expand your awareness so much that it can't contain you anymore. Reclaim your time, your decisions, your mornings. Even if it's just 10 minutes a day where you choose to think, reflect, or simply be, that's power. That's a signal to your nervous system that you're no longer asleep at the wheel. There's a reason so many people feel powerless. It's not because they don't have strength. It's because they've handed it away in tiny moments. Every time they react instead of respond, distract instead of feel, follow instead of think. Power isn't something you wait for. It's something you wake up to. And that awakening doesn't come with noise or fireworks. It starts quietly. A pause, a breath, a decision, a realization that you've been sleepwalking and that today you won't. Because from the moment you break the autopilot, you start designing your life instead of drifting through it. You stop living the same day over and over again. You become dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in a focused way, because nothing is more powerful than a person who is fully present. So ask yourself, where in your life are you just going through the motions? And what would it look like to interrupt that rhythm, to choose something new, even if it's uncomfortable? You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to stop pretending you're not in control. You are. Break the autopilot. Wake up. Your life is waiting. 3. The trap of mental distraction and energy leakage. Not all pain comes from what's happening around you. Some of the most exhausting days you've ever had weren't filled with events. They were filled with noise, mental clutter that never stops. And what's worse is that most of it doesn't belong to you. It's borrowed from someone else's opinion, someone else's drama, someone else's expectations. Distraction is no longer just a side effect of modern life. It has become its default setting. And unless you learn how to defend your inner space, it will keep draining your energy without permission or mercy. Think about this. Your brain processes around 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. But how many of those thoughts are intentional? How many are focused on what truly matters to you? Now ask the harder question. How many are just mental spam, worrying about what they meant when they texted that, replaying conversations from 3 days ago, predicting arguments that haven't happened yet, comparing your pace to someone else's highlight reel? This is energy leakage. It's not always dramatic. It's subtle, constant, and cumulative. And over time, it breaks your spirit in a way that's hard to describe. You feel busy but empty, alert but unfocused, surrounded by information but starving for meaning. Because you're not just distracted, you're scattered. And there's a difference. Distraction means your attention is pulled, but scattering means your identity is dissolving. You're trying to be everywhere, for everyone, all the time, and in the process, you lose your sense of self. You stop feeling like a grounded human being and start feeling like a screen, constantly switching tabs, responding to input, and rarely just being. Seneca once warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And if we're honest, many of us are nowhere, not because we lack goals or dreams, but because we're giving away our energy in 1,000 tiny cuts. And each time you leak energy, you lose a part of your ability to act with power. This is why protecting your mind is not just spiritual talk, it's survival. You can't grow if your energy is constantly bleeding into places that offer no return. You can't focus if your mental landscape is filled with noise you didn't choose. You can't become anything great if you don't know where your power is going. So how do you reclaim that power? It begins with a mental audit. For one day, track your mental state like you would your calories. Notice what enters your mind. Who triggered it? What platform? What habit? What belief? Write it down. You'll be shocked to realize how much of your inner bandwidth is being spent on things that don't serve your growth at all. Awareness is always the first gate. Then comes the hard part, learning to say no. Not just to people, but to patterns, to thoughts that spiral, to endless scrolling, to fake urgency. Every time you say no to mental clutter, you're saying yes to clarity. And clarity is magnetic. It strengthens your presence. It sharpens your thinking. It restores your energy. You don't need to escape life to find peace. You just need to simplify the battlefield inside your mind. One small decision at a time. Don't check your phone the first 10 minutes of the day. Cut off conversations that lead nowhere. Turn off notifications that don't feed your purpose. Don't react to every emotion like it's a command. Because here's the truth. Not every thought deserves your time. Not every emotion deserves your reaction. And not every person deserves your energy. You get to choose. And that's the freedom most people forget they have. The mind, left unchecked, will drift toward chaos. That's just how it works. But your awareness is the anchor. Your discipline is the filter. And your values are the compass. Put them to work. Don't wait for peace to show up. Create it by choosing where your energy goes and where it doesn't. So ask yourself right now, where is your energy leaking? Who or what is occupying more mental space than it should? And what would your life feel like if you took that power back? You'll never eliminate all distractions, but you can outgrow them. You can rise above the noise. And when you do, your energy becomes sacred again. 4. Awareness is the first step to transformation. Before you change anything in your life, you have to see it clearly. Not through the lens of denial, not through the fog of excuses, but through the raw and often uncomfortable truth of what's really happening. And that kind of seeing, that deep, quiet awareness, is the birthplace of all transformation. The mistake most people make is thinking that change begins with action, that if they just wake up earlier, start a new routine, or force themselves into better habits, things will get better. But without awareness, action becomes a distraction. You move faster, but you don't move forward. You become efficient at avoiding the real issue. And deep down, you know it. Awareness is the opposite of control. It's not about trying to fix yourself. It's about understanding yourself. observing your emotions without judging them, noticing your habits without rushing to label them as good or bad, seeing your life as it is, not as you want it to be, not as you pretend it is, but as it actually shows up each day. Because from that place of radical clarity, honest growth can begin. The Stoics called this kind of clarity prosos, attention, but not just any attention. It's attention with intention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must become an expert observer of your own soul." That line isn't poetic. It's a daily practice, to become a student of your own mind, to sit with your reactions and ask, where did that come from? To notice the things that trigger you and not run from them. To study your patterns like a scientist, not shame them like a critic. It sounds simple, but most people never do it. Why? Because self-awareness is uncomfortable. It shows you the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. It reveals the places where you've been lying to yourself. And it forces you to take responsibility, not just for your actions, but for your attention, your emotions, and your energy. But here's the paradox. The moment you become fully aware of your pattern, it starts to lose its power. That's the quiet miracle of observation. You don't have to fight every flaw. You just have to understand it so well that it can no longer operate in the dark. Because most destructive behavior survives through unconscious repetition. But once you bring it into the light, once you see it, you're no longer a prisoner of it. Think about your daily routines. How often do you pause to ask, why am I doing this? Do I even want this life I'm building, or am I just repeating what feels familiar? That question alone is a crack in the wall, and every crack that awareness creates is a space where new light can enter. Here's what awareness gives you. Choice. Not the illusion of choice, but real choice. The ability to pause between impulse and response. The ability to act with purpose instead of pattern. And that space between reaction and response, that's your power. That's the part of you that is free, no matter what happens around you. So if you feel stuck, don't try to force your way out. Don't rush to change everything overnight. Sit with your patterns, study your thoughts, feel your emotions fully without needing to act on them. Journal, reflect, walk in silence, whatever brings you back to yourself. Because the goal isn't to control life, it's to become so aware that you can meet it on your own terms. Transformation isn't loud, it's quiet. It begins when you stop running, when you stop blaming, when you finally sit down with your truth and say, this is where I am, and that's okay. But now I see clearly, and because I see, I can choose differently. That's the real beginning. Not the hustle, not the grind, but the awareness that creates space for something new to grow. 5. From the past to possibility. Reinventing yourself. You are not your past, but let's be honest, it still lives inside you. Not just in memories, but in habits, in doubts, in that quiet voice that whispers, you've tried before and failed. That's the weight most people carry. Not physical baggage, but identity residue, the echo of who they used to be, clouding who they're becoming. And yet, the most powerful truth is this. You are allowed to reinvent yourself. Not once, but as many times as it takes. Reinvention doesn't mean erasing your past. It means redefining your relationship with it. You don't need to be ashamed of who you were. But you do need to stop letting your history write your future. The Stoics never asked us to forget the past. They asked us to learn from it, then move forward with strength. Seneca said, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. That's the cycle of life. You grow, you outgrow, and you begin again, wiser, calmer, sharper. But the problem is, the past is seductive. It's familiar. Even if it hurts, it's what you know. That's why we replay old mistakes, old versions of ourselves, over and over. And what starts as reflection often becomes self-sabotage. You begin to believe that your past defines your ceiling, that your patterns are permanent, that you are bound to repeat what once broke you. But let me ask you something. Who told you that? Who told you that one bad chapter means the story is ruined? Who decided that a mistake from 5 years ago still gets to write your identity today? And why are you still believing them? The truth is, you get to decide who you become. And not in a vague, motivational way, but in a real, practical sense. Every time you interrupt an old behavior, every time you choose silence instead of reaction, discipline instead of comfort, growth instead of fear, you're rewriting the script. You're shifting from memory to possibility. But make no mistake, reinvention requires death, the death of an old identity, the willingness to let go of what used to define you, even if it was comforting. It takes courage to become a new version of yourself, especially when no one else has met them yet. People will question you, doubt you, remind you of who you were. That's okay. They're not supposed to see it yet. Reinvention is something you do in silence and prove in results. So how do you start? Start by getting honest. What beliefs about yourself are you still carrying that no longer serve you? Who told you that you're not capable or disciplined or worthy? And why did you agree? Self-inquiry is the first tool of reinvention, because you cannot become who you're meant to be until you stop defending who you used to be. Then take action. Small, consistent, unapologetic. Don't wait for the world to approve your change. Approve it yourself. Reclaim your mornings. Rewrite your inner dialogue. Say no more often. Practice showing up as the person you want to be, even if it feels unnatural at first. Because identity isn't found, it's built, action by action, day by day. And remember, reinvention isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about removing the layers that never belonged to you in the first place, the people-pleasing, the fear, the hesitation, the need to be understood by everyone. When you let those go, what's left is something raw, something real, the version of you that's been waiting all along. So, if your past is loud, let your future speak louder. Use the pain, but don't live in it. Use the lessons, but don't stay in the classroom forever. You've graduated. It's time to move forward. Not because you're broken, but because you're growing. This isn't about becoming someone better. It's about becoming someone truer.
6. Master your daily energy through conscious habits. Your life doesn't change in a year. It changes in a day, repeated over and over with intention. It changes in the choices you make between 6 and 8 a.m. when no one's watching, in the way you speak to yourself when you fail, in the things you do out of love for growth, not out of fear of falling behind. This is where energy is shaped, not in bursts, but in rhythm. And when you master your rhythm, you master your energy. You stop living reactively and begin to lead yourself with clarity. Most people think energy is random, that some days you just feel off for no reason. But your energy is never random. It's the reflection of your habits. It's the result of how much noise you allow in, how much rest you prioritize, what kind of thoughts you entertain, and how often you say yes when your soul is screaming no. The body keeps score, the mind remembers patterns, and your spirit knows when you're out of alignment. If you feel drained all the time, the answer isn't more coffee or motivation. The answer is in your daily system. The Stoics believed in mastery of the self before mastery of the world. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for inspiration to lead. He built systems that made discipline automatic. He journaled, reflected, walked, thought. These weren't dramatic acts. They were quiet habits that protected his focus. That's what daily energy management really is. It's not about being hyper-productive. It's about being strategically protective. So let me ask you something. What are your habits doing to your energy? Because every habit either builds you or breaks you. It either sharpens your presence or scatters your mind. There's no such thing as a neutral routine. The way you start your morning is either grounding you or distracting you. The food you eat is either fueling your clarity or feeding your fog. The people you interact with are either inspiring your spirit or draining your peace. You can't control every event in your day, but you can control how you show up for it. That begins with simple but powerful routines. Create space before the noise. Wake up and start your day on your terms. Before the notifications, before the demands, give yourself 10 minutes of conscious ownership. Breathe, reflect, move, or just sit in stillness. That's not wasted time. That's sacred alignment. And that alignment is what builds a foundation strong enough to hold the weight of your goals. Another key? Simplify. Cut the non-essential. The more choices you have to make, the more energy you lose to decision fatigue. Structure brings freedom. When you know what your body needs, what your mind thrives on, and what your values are guiding you toward, you stop questioning your every move. You just move. And don't confuse effort with effectiveness. Hustle without strategy is a trap. You don't need to do more. You need to do what matters more consistently. That's what conscious energy is. It's not the rush of adrenaline. It's the quiet power of knowing that your day is being shaped by your vision, not by outside noise. Also, protect your rest. Real energy doesn't come from pushing through exhaustion. It comes from learning to recharge without guilt. Rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. You're not a machine. You're a living system, and every system needs rhythm. Honor yours. Lastly, be mindful of your emotional inputs. Every conversation, every scroll, every complaint you listen to, all of it is either expanding your energy or consuming it. Your boundaries are not selfish. They're necessary. Guard your peace like it's the foundation of your future, because it is. The more conscious you become of how you spend your energy, the more powerful your life becomes. Not louder, not faster, just clearer, lighter, stronger. Your habits don't need to be perfect. They just need to be aligned. And the best part? You get to build them, one choice at a time, one morning at a time, one breath at a time. Control your rhythm, shape your rituals, and your energy will no longer be something you chase. It'll be something you command. 7. Discipline, environment, and the focused mind. Discipline is not about force. It's not about waking up every day and battling yourself into submission. That version of discipline eventually breaks you. Real discipline, the kind that sustains and empowers, comes from alignment, from setting up a life that makes your focus easier, not harder. And one of the most underrated truths is this: your environment is shaping your mind more than your willpower ever could. We like to think we're in control of our focus, but step into a cluttered room, open too many browser tabs, stay around people who drain your energy, and you'll feel your mind unravel, even if you don't notice it at first. That's not weakness. That's biology. The human mind wasn't designed to filter chaos endlessly. It was designed to survive it. But in survival mode, focus becomes impossible. You're reactive, distracted, constantly switching tasks, emotions, directions. And the longer you stay there, the more you forget what clarity even feels like. The Stoics didn't live in minimalism for aesthetic reasons. They understood that a quiet environment nourishes a quiet mind, that when the external world is filled with noise, the internal world becomes a battlefield. And unless you are intentional about designing your space, your schedule, and your social circle, they will design you. That's why discipline isn't just about resisting temptation. It's about removing it. So if you find yourself constantly distracted, start with your surroundings. Is your space helping you think or forcing you to escape? Are the tools you use organized around your values, or are they pulling you away from them? Your phone, your desk, your home, even your digital space. All of it speaks to your nervous system. You don't need a perfect setup, but you do need an intentional one. A space that reflects your priorities, not just your habits. Then turn to your routines. A disciplined mind needs structure, but not rigidity. You don't need to micromanage every hour. What you need is rhythm, repetition, ritual. When your body knows what's coming, your mind doesn't waste energy on decisions. That's how clarity is preserved, through simplicity. Ask yourself, what parts of my day feel scattered? What drains me before I even start working? Where am I inviting distraction without realizing it? These aren't surface-level questions. They go to the root of your mental energy, because you can't focus when your life is set up to pull you in 100 directions. And then there's the emotional environment. The people you spend time with aren't just part of your schedule, they're part of your mindset. Every conversation either sharpens or dulls your thinking. Every relationship either respects your boundaries or tests them. That's why discipline sometimes looks like distance, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for your vision. Because what you allow around you shapes what's possible within you. Here's the truth. Discipline isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. And consistency is hard when you're surrounded by chaos, both physical and emotional. That's why focus requires protection, not just from outside noise, but from the subtle pull of convenience, comfort, and passive living. Your environment either makes discipline easier or makes excuses harder to resist. So rework your environment, not all at once, just one detail at a time. A cleaner desk, a shorter to-do list, a quieter phone, a better morning, a clearer boundary. Don't underestimate how small changes shape big results. The mind thrives where there's order. It sharpens when space is created for it. And remember, a focused mind is not a forced mind. It's a supported one, supported by space, by habits, by choices that reflect what matters. And that's what discipline really is. Not punishment, but alignment. Not pressure, but design. The more aligned your life becomes, the less discipline you need to force. Because when your environment reflects your values, your focus becomes natural. And from that focus, everything begins to rise. 8. Rewire your brain. Through thought and intention, your brain is always learning, even when you're not trying to teach it. Every thought you repeat, every emotion you dwell on, every habit you allow to persist is training your mind to become a certain way. That's the truth most people overlook. You are not just experiencing your thoughts, you are wiring them in. And over time, they become automatic. Default settings that run beneath your awareness. But here's the power you may not realize you have. What has been wired in can be rewired. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. Stoicism calls it training the mind. Different languages, same truth. Your brain isn't fixed. It's alive, adaptable, responsive to repetition. And that's either your greatest strength or your greatest liability, depending on how conscious you are of what you're rehearsing internally. If you keep thinking you're not enough, your brain doesn't question it, it believes you. If you keep replaying past failures, your brain doesn't argue. It reinforces the feeling. The mind doesn't filter for truth. It filters for familiarity. And if you're not intentional, what's familiar might be fear, self-doubt, or limitation. And that's the lens you'll start to see life through. So the question is, what thoughts are you rehearsing daily? Because you are always training your brain to expect something. A future, a mood, a reality. Most people unconsciously train their minds for anxiety, for comparison, for frustration. Not because they want to, but because they've never paused long enough to break the loop. The Stoics understood this long before science confirmed it. Epictetus said, "We become what we give our attention to." That isn't metaphorical, that's neurological. Your focus is your sculptor, and every thought is a tool, either carving clarity or deepening confusion. But here's the beautiful part. You don't need to think positive all day. You just need to think on purpose. Intention is the antidote to repetition. Instead of letting your mind wander into the same tired corners, you start asking better questions. Instead of reacting emotionally, you pause and choose a response that reflects who you want to become, not just who you've been. It begins with small shifts. Write down the thoughts that drain you, not to judge, but to observe. Then write their opposites, not delusional affirmations, but grounded truths. Replace "I'm behind" with "I'm building." Replace "I always mess up" with "I'm learning through this." These rewrites matter, even if they feel awkward at first, because the brain doesn't need perfection to change, it needs consistency. Add intention to your speech too. The words you speak reinforce the thoughts you believe. Every time you call yourself lazy, weak, or broken, your brain hears that as a command. But when you speak from vision, when you say "I'm getting stronger," "I'm gaining clarity," "I'm showing up," you're not just describing reality, you're shaping it. And don't underestimate the power of visualization. When you close your eyes and imagine yourself acting with discipline, with courage, with calm, your brain rehearses that experience. And the more you rehearse it, the more natural it becomes. That's how change works. Not in one breakthrough moment, but through repetition, reflection, and emotional rehearsal. You're not stuck. You're wired. And wiring can change. So take back the pen. Rewrite the script. Speak truth into your mind. Picture the life that reflects your values. Interrupt the thoughts that don't serve you. And do it every day, not out of desperation, but out of devotion to your potential. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker. You are not your emotions. You are the one observing them. And you are not your past. You are the architect of what comes next. Rewire your brain not through force, but through intention, repetition, and quiet belief. 9. Your words are spells. Speak with power. Every word you speak is a signal to your brain, to your body, to the people around you. And most of the time, you're not just describing reality, you're creating it. That's why your words matter more than you think. Not just the ones you say out loud, but especially the ones you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening. Because language is not neutral. It programs belief. It either shapes your strength or reinforces your doubt. You've felt this before. A single sentence from someone, a cruel comment, a careless remark, stayed with you for years. Why? Because words carry energy. They bypass logic and go straight to the emotional core. They echo, they linger, and sometimes they grow roots where they don't belong. The same thing happens internally. When you keep saying, "I'm tired," "I can't focus," "I always mess this up," your brain doesn't question it, it complies. So the question is, what kind of reality are you building with your words? The Stoics were careful with speech, not just for moral reasons, but for mental clarity. They believed in restraint, in thinking before speaking, in choosing silence over noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." But the reverse is also true. The things you say shape the thoughts you believe. The more you say something, the more real it becomes, even if it isn't true. This is where discipline begins, in the vocabulary you allow. If you constantly speak from limitation, from victimhood, from exhaustion, then you are reinforcing the very states you're trying to escape. But when you shift your language even slightly, something begins to change. When you replace "I'm overwhelmed" with "I'm prioritizing," or "I'm not good at this" with "I'm getting better every time," your nervous system responds, your energy shifts, your focus sharpens. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's not about fake positivity. It's about speaking from vision, not from habit. When your words align with the person you want to become, not just the version you've been, you accelerate your growth. Because your voice becomes your guide, not your enemy. Start paying attention. Listen to yourself when you speak. Do your words sound like someone who's building or someone who's breaking? Speak less about what you fear and more about what you're creating. Speak less about what others did to you and more about how you're rising from it. Speak less about what's missing and more about what you're building. And remember, it's not just the big speeches that shape your life. It's the small phrases, repeated daily, how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake, what you say before you begin a new challenge, how you describe your current situation, to yourself, to others. That language becomes your lens, and the lens becomes your limitation or your liberation. One of the most powerful things you can do right now is to choose a new set of core phrases. Simple, intentional, and clear. I'm grounded. I'm getting stronger. I choose peace. I'm not there yet, but I'm moving. Say them. Repeat them. Not because they're magic, but because you are. Your brain needs reminders, and your voice is the most consistent reminder it has. So speak with power, not volume, clarity, not arrogance, intention. Your words are tools, your words are guides, and sometimes your words are the spell that awakens the person you were always meant to become. 10. Design a life that honors who you truly are. At some point, you have to stop living the life that others expect from you and start creating the one that reflects your truth. Not the version of you shaped by fear, not the role you play to feel accepted, but the real you, the one underneath the noise, the expectations, the performance. Because if you don't design a life that honors who you truly are, you'll end up building a life that quietly breaks you. Most people don't realize this until it's too late, until they've climbed a ladder and found it leaning against the wrong wall, until they've said yes too many times to paths that felt safe, but never felt right, until they have sacrificed their energy, their voice, their time, trying to meet standards that were never theirs to begin with. But you don't have to wait for rock bottom. You can choose a different path now, a deliberate path, a life that feels like alignment, not effort, a life that demands your focus, not because it's chaotic, but because it's meaningful. The Stoics taught that the highest life is one lived in accordance with your nature, not what the world calls success, not what culture says is desirable, but what your soul knows is real. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." That's not just advice, and it's a blueprint. First, you clarify your identity. Then you build your environment, your habits, your relationships, and your routines to reflect that identity. That's design. That's inner freedom. So ask yourself the harder questions. What kind of life drains me? What kind of life energizes me? Where do I feel like I'm pretending? Where do I feel most like myself? These answers don't come overnight. But if you keep asking and keep listening, you'll start to hear the quiet truth. The one that's been buried under shoulds and have-tos for far too long. Designing a life doesn't mean having a 5-year plan or building some perfect image. It means becoming ruthlessly honest about what matters to you, and then slowly, consistently reshaping your world to support that. One boundary, one habit, one decision at a time. Maybe that means walking away from people who don't respect your growth. Maybe it means saying no to opportunities that pay well but cost you peace. Maybe it means rearranging your schedule so your mornings belong to you. Not your phone, not your inbox, not the outside world. Whatever it looks like, the principle is the same. Your life should reflect your values, not your fears. And remember, honoring who you truly are is not selfish. It's necessary, because the world doesn't need more people fitting in. It needs more people fully alive, fully aligned, fully present. When you start living from that place, everything changes. Your confidence deepens, your decisions sharpen, your relationships either grow or fall away, and both are a form of progress. So stop asking for permission to be yourself. You don't need it. What you need is the courage to build a life that fits your soul, even if it doesn't fit the mold. You've spent enough time trying to become what others expect. Now it's time to remember who you really are and live like it. You've made it to the end of this journey, but this isn't the kind of knowledge you just listen to and move on from. This is the kind of truth you carry with you, the kind that quietly rewrites how you see yourself and how you move through the world. Focus is not something you find, it's something you claim. And every single point in this episode is a doorway to that claim. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy goes, your life is built. So if you've been feeling scattered, lost, overwhelmed, this is your reminder that you're not broken. You've just been giving your power to the wrong things. Take it back, one breath at a time, one habit at a time, one decision at a time. You don't have to become a new person overnight. You just have to start aligning your life with the person you already are, underneath the noise, the doubt, and the pressure to be everything to everyone. Guard your energy like it matters, because it does. Speak with intention, think with clarity, and live like someone who remembers that their focus is sacred. If this episode helped you refocus or reconnect with your inner power, share it with someone who might need the same. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because the journey doesn't end here, it only deepens. Now go live your truth, quietly, powerfully, and without apology.